All right, ready to dive deep.
Let's do it.
Today we're cracking open Yuval Noah Harari's *Sapiens: A Brief History of Humankind*.
Ah, a classic.
It's a book that's, well, let's just say has sparked a lot of conversation, and our listeners are definitely in on the action.
Rightfully so. It's a pretty ambitious undertaking, covering the entire span of human history.
Exactly. And that's why you're here. You're our expert guide, here to unpack all the dense ideas and aha moments that make *Sapiens* so compelling. So let's get right to it.
Sounds great.
Before we get into the specifics, could you give us the gist? What's Harari's main argument in *Sapiens*? What's the big takeaway?
Well, in a nutshell, Harari argues that our species, Homo sapiens, didn't just stumble into becoming the dominant force on this planet.
We're not just really lucky, right?
It's more than luck. He says it wasn't just about being stronger or faster than other human species. It wasn't just our biology. It was something much more profound.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Harari believes it all boils down to our unique capacity for culture, our ability to cooperate on a massive scale, and perhaps most importantly, our knack for storytelling.
Storytelling. You're saying stories are the key to our success.
In a way, yes. Think about it. What separates us from other animals? We don't just communicate basic needs, we weave narratives.
So instead of just, I'm hungry, it's, let's go hunt a mammoth together.
Exactly. But even beyond hunting, it's also, this is our land, these are our gods, these are the rules we live by. These shared beliefs, even if they're fictional, have allowed us to build empires, establish complex societies, and even create the world we live in today.
That's a pretty powerful argument. So where does this ability to believe in shared stories, in these collective myths, come from? Was there a specific moment in our history when this all clicked into place?
Harari points to what he calls the cognitive revolution.
Okay, I've heard of this, but refresh my memory.
This wasn't a single event, but more like a gradual shift in our cognitive abilities that started roughly 70,000 years ago. It's when humans, seemingly out of nowhere, developed the capacity for language as we know it, for abstract thought, for imagining things that don't physically exist.
That's fascinating. So it's not just about being able to say, hey, look, a mammoth. It's about saying, remember that huge mammoth we hunted last season? I bet we'll find its descendants near that watering hole we discovered.
You've got it. It's about planning, strategizing, passing knowledge down through generations. This is where we start to see the seeds of civilization, the foundation for everything from art and religion to science and technology. It all stems from this cognitive leap.
Okay, so we've got the cognitive revolution, this explosion of language and abstract thought. What's the next major turning point in Harari's narrative?
Well, the cognitive revolution set the stage, but things really took off, so to speak, with the agricultural revolution.
Ah, farming.
Precisely. And this might seem like a no-brainer, a clear sign of progress. We're talking about 10,000 years ago. Humans transitioned from wandering nomads to settled farmers. We started cultivating crops, domesticating animals.
Sounds pretty straightforward. More food, more stability. What's Harari's take on that?
Well, he doesn't disagree, but he digs deeper. He argues that while agriculture did lead to food surpluses and permanent settlements, it also came with a whole host of unintended consequences.
Unintended consequences, like what?
For one, agriculture led to population explosions. People were living closer together, which meant more competition for resources, more potential for conflict. This need to manage larger groups, to organize and divide labor, is what Harari argues led to the rise of social hierarchies.
Ah, so instead of everyone being more or less equal, you start to see leaders, rulers, social classes.
Exactly. And with that comes the need for more complex forms of governance, for laws, for systems of order, things that weren't as essential when humans lived in small, nomadic bands.
And probably a different relationship to the land itself. I mean, if you're a nomad, you move around, but if you're a farmer, you're tied to land, you have a stake in it.
Absolutely. And that ties into what Harari talks about with the rise of private property, territorial disputes, and the very idea of ownership, concepts that would have been foreign to our hunter-gatherer ancestors.
This is so interesting. We often think of agriculture as this purely positive development, but Harari is saying, not so fast.
Exactly. He's challenging us to think about the complexities, the trade-offs, the unintended consequences of this seemingly straightforward shift in how we interacted with the natural world.
So with agriculture, you have larger populations, more complex societies, new forms of social organization. This brings us back to the power of storytelling. How does Harari connect these things?
This is where Harari brings it all together. He argues that to manage these larger, more intricate societies, humans needed something more than just brute force or basic cooperation. They needed something to bind them together, to create a sense of shared identity and purpose.
I think I see where you're going with this.
And that's where myths, religions, ideologies, these grand narratives come into play.
Right. These stories gave people a shared framework, a set of values, a reason to work together, even if they were complete strangers.
Think about it. You can't build a pyramid, an empire, or a global trade network if everyone is operating solely on their own individualistic worldview. You need a cohesive narrative, a shared belief system that transcends individual differences.
That's so true. But weren't these shared narratives sometimes used to justify inequality, to control people, to wage wars?
You're absolutely right. Harari doesn't shy away from the darker side of these shared myths. He acknowledges that they can be, and often have been, used to justify all sorts of atrocities throughout history. However, he argues that their power, for both good and bad, comes from their ability to unite vast numbers of people under a common cause.
It's incredible how he ties these seemingly disparate threads together, from the cognitive revolution to agriculture to the power of storytelling.
It's one of the things that makes Sapiens so captivating. He connects the dots between ancient history and the complexities of the modern world.
I agree. Now, if I can put you on the spot for a moment, why do you think this book has resonated with so many people, even those who might not typically pick up a history book?
That's a great question. I think part of it is Harari's writing style. He's a brilliant storyteller himself. He manages to take complex historical events and make them engaging and accessible to a wide audience. It's almost like reading a really well-written novel.
He does have a knack for weaving a compelling narrative.
But beyond the storytelling, I think it's the questions he raises. Harari isn't afraid to tackle the big existential questions about what it means to be human, about our place in the universe, about the future of our species. He forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about our past, our present, and where we might be headed.
So it's thought-provoking in the best way possible. It stays with you long after you've finished reading.
Exactly. It sparks curiosity, it encourages you to question your assumptions, and it reminds us that history isn't just a bunch of dates and names. It's a story. And it's a story that we're all a part of.
That's a great way to put it. So for listeners who are about to embark on their own Sapiens journey, what's the one thing you hope they take away from it?
If I had to choose just one, I think it would be the understanding that the world as we know it, with all its complexities and contradictions, is not inevitable.
What do you mean?
Well, Harari shows us that human history is full of twists and turns, unexpected leaps, and unintended consequences. It's not a linear progression. And understanding that, realizing that the structures we often take for granted are not set in stone, is the first step towards imagining and creating a different kind of future.
That's a powerful thought. And it speaks to Harari's ability to make us question, to make us rethink what we think we know about ourselves and the world around us. Well, on that note, a huge thank you to our expert for this incredible deep dive into Sapiens.
My pleasure. It's been great chatting with you.
And to you, our listeners, we hope you found this exploration as illuminating as we did. What are your thoughts on Harari's big ideas? Head over to our website and share your insights. Until next time, happy reading.